sharpness in her voice. "What are we owed?" He had no intention of arguing with her, nor had he answers to her questions. He quietly dressed and moved to the front room, leaving the bedroom door ajar. The front room, which served as kitchen and dining room, as well as their daughter Sean's bedroom before her arrest, was half the size of the bedroom and cluttered with decades of accumulations. A few jars, once used annually to make Sean's favorite pickles, sat empty and dusty on top of one another in a corner. Next to the jars was a cardboard box in which Teacher Gu and Mrs. Gu kept their 2 hens, as much for companionship as for the few eggs they laid. Upon hearing Teacher Gu's steps, the hens stirred, but he ignored them. He put on his old sheepskin coat, and before leaving the house, he tore a sheet bearing the date of the previous day off the calendar, a habit he had maintained for decades. Even in the unlit room, the date, March 21st, 1979, and the small characters underneath, Spring Equinox, stood out. He tore the second sheet off too and squeezed the 2 thin squares of paper into a ball. He himself was breaking a ritual now, but there was no point in pretending that this was a day like any other. Teacher Gu walked to the public outhouse at the end of the alley. On normal days, his wife would trail behind him. They were a couple of habit, their morning routine unchanged for the past 10 years. The alarm went off at 6 o'clock, and they would get up at once. When they returned from the outhouse, they would take turns washing at the sink, she pumping the water out for both of them, neither speaking. A few steps away from the house, Teacher Gu spotted a white sheet with a huge red check marked across it, pasted on the wall of the row houses, and he knew that it carried the message of his daughter's death. Apart from the lone street lamp at the far end of the alley and a few dim morning stars, it was dark. Teacher Gu walked closer and saw that the characters in the announcement were written in the ancient Li-styled calligraphy, each stroke carrying extra weight, as if the writer had been used to such a task, spelling out someone's imminent death with unhurried elegance. Teacher Gu imagined the name belonging to a stranger, whose sin was not of the mind, but a physical one. He could then, out of the habit of an intellectual, ignore the grimness of the crime. A rape, a murder, a robbery, or any misdeed against innocent souls, and appreciate the calligraphy for its aesthetic merit. But the name was none other than the one he had chosen for his daughter, Gu Shan. Teacher Gu had long ago ceased to understand the person bearing that name. He and his wife had been timid, law-abiding citizens all their lives. Since the age of 14, Shan had been wild with passions he couldn't grasp. First a fanatic believer in Chairman Mao and his Cultural Revolution, and later an adamant non-believer and a harsh critic of her generation's revolutionary zeal. In ancient tales, she could have been one of those divine creatures who borrow their mothers' wombs to enter the mortal world and make a name for themselves, as a heroine or a devil, depending on the intention of the heavenly powers. Teacher Gu and his wife could have been her parents for as long as she needed them to nurture her. But even in those old tales, the parents, bereft when their children left them for some destined calling, ended up heartbroken, flesh and blood humans as they were, unable to envision a life larger than their own. Teacher Gu heard the creak of a gate down the alley, and he hurried to leave before he was caught weeping in front of the announcement. His daughter was a counterrevolutionary, and it was a perilous situation for anyone, her parents included, to be seen shedding tears over her looming death. When Teacher Gu returned home, he found his wife rummaging in an old trunk. A few young girls' outfits, the ones that she had been unwilling to sell to second-hand stores when Shan had outgrown them, were laid out on the unmade bed. Soon more were added to the pile, blouses and trousers, a few pairs of